Hey guys, so you ready for today's March 9th, 2026, 6:27 a.m. Central Time. So I'm going to be pretty candid in this video. If you're first checking out this channel for the first time and this video gets around, who knows, who cares, never going to happen. Anyway, I was in the Marine Corps for 8 years. I was in counterintelligence, HUMINT. I have been out for over a decade. I served during the Iraq-Afghanistan war, and my primary target was basically Iran. That had to do with drug trafficking, money, human, weapons, all kinds of stuff that went to proxies, what they like to call them, militias, and all kinds of places all over the world. It wasn't just in the Middle East, among other things that I did. So here's the deal. Had this conversation with my husband earlier today and this morning, and I said, hey, should I do a video on this? He's like, yeah, definitely. Thing is, I don't have any documents to show you because those documents would obviously be classified. I don't have them in my possession at all. Anyway, it does not matter. But I'm going to talk about it, and I'm going to show you some stuff I wrote down in this document. So take whatever I say with a grain of salt for all I give a shit. It doesn't matter. Here's the deal. Call it an opinion if you want. But the video is going to be named Possible Mistake Iran. My last video I talked about with the Iran war, following things would have to happen in order for this to actually work out. I basically said they had to take out the ballistic missiles, which would be drones or anything else that was a mode of transportation, right? Then they'd have to, well, and they'd also have to need to take out, you know, uranium and stuff, and I don't know how they plan on doing that shit. But anyway, they'd have to take out leadership. Leadership, there's a lot of people in Iran they'd have to take out. You're not talking about 40, 50, 100 people. You're talking about a lot, hundreds of people, okay? Because the way that this particular country is run is not like the United States, for example. If POTUS goes out, the VP comes in. If the VP goes out, the House leadership goes in. If the House leadership goes out, the Senate leadership goes in, and so and so and so and so. It's automatic, right? These types of countries actually will elect within the government their next leader, if you will. Well, there is a succession. There's like an immediate 3 succession actually after the Khamenei, but that's all gone. So anyway, the leadership that's left will actually pick the leadership to lead the country, which they have done at this point overnight, which is the eldest son of Khamenei. We'll get into that in a second. So you need to take out the leadership. Then you need to arm the Iranians, the ones that don't want this regime. Most people in Tehran, okay, actually liked, quote unquote, agree with, whatever you want to call it, the current regime that was in place and is in place currently. You're talking about arming the other provinces, the other cities, everything else, all over the country, okay, where people were rising up and stuff. I'm not saying everybody in Tehran agrees with this regime by any means. You'll see a bunch of riots and protests there. But the point is, there's a lot of people that still want to keep this regime. You need to arm the ones that don't. That's difficult to do. The U.S. arming them would be very difficult. Perhaps Israel could arm them. That's what I said in my last video, beside the point. The next thing would have to be bringing in the exile prince or have someone within come in. Basically, they have prisoners that are political prisoners. They have leadership and different, I don't know if you want to call leadership. They have different fractions of parties there, if you want to call it a party, of people that could be leaders. Not well-known names, not necessarily well-known names in Iran. But the prince seems to have quite a bit of backing, because obviously he was there before. But him getting into the country is a whole other deal. He has the hugest, what do you call it? Bounty on his head. So him walking in there right now is not a good idea. So what's happening? Possible mistake. The reason I'm saying this, for example, everybody like civilians and the Pentagon and stuff like that, they like to call, and war think tanks, they'll call it war games. We do war games with every country that is not an ally. And that's what it's called. That's what people call it, okay? And they'll even say it, like at the Pentagon, they'll say war games. Mostly think tanks will say war games. What we called them were aggressive assessments in the intelligence community when we were brought in as basically not just opinions, but bringing in assessments of what we had on the country. When I was serving, there was no such thing as a JCPOA. I was not serving at that time. We only knew certain nuclear sites. I mean, we had satellites all over that country. We knew certain nuclear sites that were obvious. We knew they had ballistic missiles. We knew they had drones. Technology, as far as how far along they were with stuff, was questionable. Especially even with nuclear weapons, it was or nuclear, like uranium and enriching stuff, was questionable. We knew all kinds of stuff. Okay, so but we didn't necessarily know where it was stored or anything else. But if you watch the satellites long enough and you live and breathe this shit, you actually know where things start to move around and where dirt starts to shift. Point is, I was actually part of a couple of those discussions with those aggressive assessments. The best scenario, or scenario, however people like to say that word, where Iran was actually taken over and changed, what regime change was absolutely necessary. There was no option that Iran did not change their behavior in the Middle East without regime change. In fact, in most of those, we'll call them war games, if Iran's leadership stayed in place, it was going to get worse for the Middle East, which is why I said in that video why they're bombing their neighbors. Why did I say they're bombing their neighbors? They're bombing their neighbors. Why? Because they're trying to put them in place. Okay, they're bombing civilian areas, not bases at these places in Saudi Arabia or any of these things. They're bombing hotels, they're bombing airports, they're bombing. Actually, I think they bombed a neighborhood the other day. Things like that in like 12 or 13 different countries. Okay, they're trying to exert their dominance of you will be fucked if we stay in power, and it's not if, because these people believe they will stay in power. Meaning, you're now on our radar. You're going to be a problem, and we're going to make sure that you stay in line. And number two, they're also, quote unquote, punishing them for agreeing with this war. Whether or not they actually were shooting the weapons, they obviously weren't, but they're also doing it that way. But they're hitting civilian targets for that reason. It is to change public opinion in those countries. It's not to actually change anything that the government's doing, like in Saudi Arabia, for example, or in the UAE, any of those places. They're not hitting the military bases because they're not going after the government. They're going after the people. They're trying to scare people, okay? So they're trying to change the people's perception of this war, and they're scared now, and those hotels and all those things are empty and all that stuff now, and people obviously can't travel. Airspace is shut down. People are terrified in those areas, and they're terrified because Iran's shooting shit at them for no fucking reason, and their military is not shooting back. And so the public opinion in all of those countries are probably very varied, okay? And who knows what they are. I haven't seen any reports from anyone in any of those countries' opinions about this war. So that's what they're doing. They're trying, it's a scare tactic in order to say, hey, we stay in power, you're screwed. Two, we're going to start hitting your civilian shit to basically uprise your people against you. And three, we're just pissed off at you because you're not stopping the United States. You're allowing the United States to use some of your bases and everything else. That's why Iran is hitting their fucking neighbors. Why anyone is having a problem with that as far as not knowing or realizing, or why are they hitting their neighbors? It's so crazy. That's why they're hitting their neighbors, okay? In the aggressive assessment or war game, the best possibility, like I said, every single one required the regime to change. This government knew going into this war that regime change was necessary. Did they want to be the ones to make the regime change? Probably not. They sure as hell didn't want to be seen that way. And then Trump coming out and saying he wants a say in who's going to be the next leader of Iran? Are you kidding me? That was the dumbest thing he could have ever fucking said in his fucking life. Anyway, beside the point. The best scenario that we had come up with in a think tank that was over at the Pentagon one time was the UK, Israel, us, and then Saudi Arabia came in later. And it was to take out, like I said, the JCPOA didn't exist, the IAEA, the atomic weapons, blah, 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 it deals with uranium and stuff from the UN. They hadn't been there, so like a lot of this stuff was in the dark. So we were guessing on a lot of stuff too. We're going based off of human, which is human intelligence, people on the ground, and we're going off of satellites and everything else that we knew. So it was UK, United States, Israel, and eventually Saudi Arabia. The regime changed because the people were armed after all the bombing took place and took out the centrifuges, took out the missiles, took out any type of drones they had, launch pads, everything like that they could take out, possibly take out, period, like as many as possible, that they couldn't even hit their neighbors anymore, kind of thing. There was in no scenario that Iran was going to start hitting their neighbors, though. I'll tell you that right now. There was no scenario. So that's a new one. I'm not surprised that they're doing that, but that was never in any of our little assessments that I was a part of. So anyway, UK, US, Israel, eventually Saudi Arabia. Regime change happened. Iranian people who did not back the regime were armed. I'll just say that without saying who would arm them. And it had nothing to do with the prince coming in. It actually had to do with some people that were in prisons that were part of political prisoners that came out, that had to do with taking things over. As far as temporarily, we only went to a certain degree. We didn't play this out, 10 years to see how this was going to go. It was basically a 2-year mission is what we were looking at here. So we took out all their weaponry, launch pads, everything, ballistic missile program, drones, blah, blah, blah. Took out the sites for centrifuges and stuff. Removing the uranium was a whole other situation I won't even get into because you can't blow that shit up very easily. Then you basically take out the leadership that you can. But the problem now is there's been a ton of leadership taken out. But leadership hasn't been taken out fast enough. And now these people are underground. And that is a problem. So leadership actually should have been taken out by, in our war game, would have been the UK and Israel. And we would have been taking out all of their weaponry. Okay? Leadership would have been taken out like 75% to 85%. I think it actually went up to 89% of leadership was taken out, which included almost every leader that had to do with the IRGC. This douchebag that they have put in place now, which is the eldest son of Khamenei, was actually like shadow prince or some stupid shit they said on the news today. I know nothing about this dude. Absolutely nothing. All I know is he was part of the IRGC. And the reason I think they're putting him in place now is because they need a military man in charge. Not just to keep the regime going, because he is like his father, and apparently he's even worse than his father. Excuse me. But they need someone who isn't going to be just a head. They are going to need someone who actually has some sort of training to fight back and fight this situation. It's like us putting a general in charge, okay? That's why I think they put this guy in charge at the moment. And he's not well known. He's never spoken in public. He's not seen on any videos or anything. So nobody knows shit about this dude. But he's well known in the IRGC, and he actually worked with the IRGC. It honestly sounds as though the way that they've been talking about this guy, that he's actually in intelligence in the IRGC. That is my absolute best assessment with that. Beside the point. So you take out the leadership. The best scenario was 89%. Arm the Iranians, excuse me, I hate it. Everybody keeps saying Iran and Iranians, and it pisses me off. It's not how you say it. It's Iran and Iranians. You arm them, okay? Like I said, didn't matter who, whatever. And then the people that were in the prisons, that were the political prisoners, came out, basically started, quote unquote, a party, if you want to call it that. And then they started rebuilding things. And it did not start in Tehran. Our assessment did not start in Tehran. Every single assessment we had where it started in Tehran, meaning the new regime, it ended badly. So far, we have a problem here, and this may be a mistake. We are taking out their ballistic missiles, drones, sites, storage, I don't know if we're doing centrifuges yet. I don't know what we're doing with the uranium that they got sitting there. Launch pads, everything. Took out a lot of leadership, not nearly as much as they should have by now. And arming Iranians has not happened. And as far as I know, none of the prisons have been emptied at all regarding political prisoners or anything else, or any prisoners, period. Even the protesting prisoners. Nothing has happened with the prisons as far as I know. As far as I know, I'm just like you guys. I'm not in the military anymore, and I have no like back door to anything. So, and the exiled prince has absolutely no way he's going into that country until things are ready to go. And ready to go may not happen. This may have been a mistake. Things were not done in succession they should have been done. We and Israel going it alone never worked out well in those assessments that we came up with. I was not involved in every quote-unquote war game possible regarding this country. I was not. I was probably involved in maybe a dozen. And none of them was it just us and Israel. This could be a mistake. And I could have done this video prior to the video I did, my last video I uploaded talking about the Iran war. Do I agree with this war? Yes, like I said, I agree with this war. This war needed to happen. However, I didn't necessarily want to go into all this detail and all this wonderful stuff, but I'm not showing you any documents. I don't have any documents to show you. Everything I'm saying, you can take with a grain of salt. It doesn't really fucking matter. I'm not saying anything, I'm not showing you anything that's classified. So as far as anyone's concerned, I'm just talking on my ass, okay? So I really don't care. I want you guys to know exactly what happens here. This could be a possible mistake at this point. It really depends on how much more leadership they are able to take out, including this dude that is related to the Khamenei. It's going to be a problem if he sticks around. Like I said, I believe that he is in the intelligence division of the IRGC, in my opinion, based on some of the aspects of what this guy has done in the past. If that is true, we have a problem on our hands. This is Are You Ready For It? Take care, guys. Have a great day.